Welcome back, everyone. This week we are doing a cold process recipe using breast milk. I'm doing a 1 pound batch. For those of you that might be interested or new to soap making, welcome to the channel. And this is just going to give you some quick tips and tricks. Right now I'm mixing the milk that I have already pumped. I pumped it a couple days ago. You can use fresh milk as well. Doesn't really matter. But you just want to make sure that if it has been sitting that you mix that layer of fat back in. So for the first part, we're going to measure out the milk, and we want to measure out in fluid ounces, not in, or by weight, not in fluid ounces. So that's why I'm using the scale, and for all of the oils going forward in the line, everything all needs to be actually measured on a scale. Do not go off the measurements that you see on the bottle. It will be relatively similar, but you want to keep it as accurate as you can. If you're new to soap making process and you're doing a batch of soap that is this small, it is very important. So I've got a silicone pan, and you can use ice cube tray or anything you have, because we're just going to be pouring the milk into the ice cube tray and then popping it in the freezer. I let my milk sit in the freezer for about, I think, 4 hours before it was fully frozen. It might, vary a little bit depending on how much you're doing. But like I said, this is just a simple, easy recipe for probably beginners if you haven't done this before. So for the next step, I'm going to be measuring out all the oils. I'm just putting them all into one container. There are a couple of hard oils in this recipe, so you will need to melt them down. And depending on how you want to do this, you can either put the hard oils in a double boiler and melt them down to a full liquid, or you can pop them in the microwave for 30 seconds at a time and then kind of stir the oil mixture until all of the oils are completely melted. You don't want any solid bits of oils in your soap, because if you do that, it will not properly bond with the lye and you will have issues with your soap. For this recipe, I'm just kind of using oils that I thought were easily available to most people. You should be able to find most of these at your local grocery store, or like a bulk store or a Whole Foods store should have some of these, or you may be able to find them locally from somebody you know if you just ask around of where you can find them. Like I said, I just wanted to make this recipe a little bit simpler for you guys. Once you have measured out all the oils, you can go ahead and, like I said, start melting them down, and then you can just set them aside because you do want them to be at room temperature. You do not want them to be too hot. Our goal is to get the temperature of the oil to be within about 10 to 15 degrees of the lye solution once we're done mixing that. So what I'll do is I'll just set these oils aside and kind of let them come to room temperature after they are melted, and I will get started on the next step. So these are the ice cubes that I had put in the freezer from earlier. I'm just going to start with about half of what we have here, 3 of them, or 4 I should say, and then I'm going to take about 3 or 4 scoops of the actual lye and start mixing it in. And you do have to stir this the whole way through, so I know it's going to seem like it's taking a while and nothing's happening, but it actually will start to melt fairly quickly. One thing we want to look for or keep in mind is when we're melting these cubes down is we want to keep the milk as close as we can to the white color that you see right now. So if it starts to yellow, add another ice cube. And you can kind of see there are a little bit of chunks of lye in there. They're sticking to the edge of the container or the bottom of the container. You need to make sure those are fully mixed in before you add more lye. You just really want to take your time and do this slowly. I would say it's going to take you from anywhere from about, I would say, like 10 to 20 minutes to fully get everything added, and you just want to go as slow as you can with this. If you don't already have a temp gun, I would suggest getting one. They're fairly inexpensive at most tool stores or stuff like that. Some auto stores have them as well, but I just keep my temp gun around. You want to ideally keep the lye water solution, I would say, under about 80 degrees, because when it starts getting warmer than that, I do notice that the milk starts to yellow. I know it's going to be something you probably can't avoid. It probably can't get all the way up to about 100 degrees before it starts to scorch or turn brown. Like I said, just keep an eye on it. You'll kind of know, or you'll start to see the like yellowing, and then you'll know that it's getting too hot. Like I said, just keep adding those ice cubes as you go along, and you can kind of see the temperature on the solution is getting a little bit higher as I add more lye and as I keep stirring. These next set of ingredients are totally optional, but I am using kaolin clay, and if you are using clays, you do want to add a little bit of water. The first time I added water, it was a little bit soupy, so I had to drain some of it off and then come back and add a little bit more clay. You do want it as close as you can to like a paste consistency. It's thought to help anchor like the fragrance oil. I also just wanted it because I like the way this feels on the skin. It is very rich and creamy. For the fragrance oil, I'm just doing 1 ounce of Awaken. It is a fragrance oil that does not contain any vanilla in, and it also smells very citrusy, so it'll keep your soap white if it doesn't have vanilla in it. I'm also using some petals that I bought from a sampler pack. I wanted to try them out in soap, and I thought this would be the perfect soap for it. It would just elevate it and give the soap a really elegant look. So now that I'm measuring or using the temp gun to check my lye water and my oils, the temperatures of those two are pretty close together. You can pretty much soap at room temperature if you're unsure, but again, if it's your first time making soap, I would highly recommend that you do invest in a temp gun. So I just kind of go ahead and add those together slowly, and then I'm going to blend the mixture for about 3 to 5 minutes. With a stick blender. And somebody asked in one of my other videos if they could use just like a other blender or hand whisk. It's going to take you forever. You don't want to use a regular blender that you do like with a cake or anything, because it's going to make a lot of air bubbles in your soap, and you don't want air bubbles in your soap. So a stick blender is the best option. You can mix it by hand, but you may be sitting here for like an hour before your soap fully solidifies. But I just bring this to a light trace, and this recipe, I designed it to be a light trace in case some of you wanted to do intricate designs and you get a little bit more advanced with your soap making skills. So if you have questions on what trace looks like, you just kind of want to get to like a pudding consistency. There's lots of other soap videos out there that explain that. Once the soap is at a light trace, you can go ahead and put it into your mold. I am using a 1 pound soap mold for this, so this will give us about 4 to 5 bars. If you're wondering why I'm tapping it on the counter, I'm just trying to get out any air bubbles that may be in the soap solution. And you can let this mixture sit for about, I don't know, I would say a full 24 hours would be the best. You can maybe let it sit a little bit longer before you pop it out of the mold. I let this sit about 30 minutes before I started putting the flowers on top, because when I got it to a light trace, it was still, like you couldn't see me swirling it around. It was not the right consistency to put something on the top of the soap. So you want to make sure that the soap is really nice and thick, and it is probably best practices to keep your gloves on for this step. It's just with flowers, it was a little bit easier for me to place them without my gloves on. Okay, it's been a couple days, guys, and I went ahead and I popped this out of the mold ahead of time, just because it's a little bit easier. Sometimes with that 1 pound mold, they get a little bit stuck, and I forgot to tell you guys while I was filming this, you can put in a little bit of sodium lactate so it does harden a little bit quicker. But here's the loaf. I let it sit a couple days, uncut, just outside of the loaf, because this recipe is softer. It will stay soft for a while, but I'm going to actually turn this on the side when I cut it, so that those flower buds don't make like drag marks. This knife's a little bit wet. Hold on. Okay. So I just wanted to share with you guys like a nice clean recipe for breast milk soap. I hope you like this recipe, and if you want a recipe like this or more recipes like this, let me know. I have more on my channel for breast milk specifically, or if you just wanted like a 1 pound recipe, This is perfect. You don't have to use breast milk. You can sub it out for water instead of milk. And this soap is still really soft. That's why I didn't want to cut it too soon, because you see how like the knife sticks to it just a little bit. And I'm gonna go ahead and let this cure. I love the fragrance oil that I chose because it is very like light and airy. Look at that, guys, it's gorgeous. And I like how creamy this is gonna look. I am imagining with that clay, like it's just gonna feel really soft on your skin. The other breast milk soaps that I've made have been some of my favorites. So I would like, if you have breast milk available to you and you want to make it for personal use or for a friend or something, I highly would recommend it. You know, maybe ask your friend if you're not, you know, breastfeeding or something, if you can have some, because I just love the way it turns out. It's very creamy. It is similar to other milk soaps, but you know, I don't know, it's special. So it's a good gift too for somebody. If you know somebody that's breastfeeding and they want like a gift, you can use it on children. I don't know if I mentioned that. I use it on mine. I let it cure a little bit longer though. I let this cure for like about 2 to 3 months, just because I want to make sure like all of the lye has fully evaporated, especially if you're like, or not evaporated, but you know what I mean, binded with the other ingredients, especially if you're going to use this on a baby. Also keep in mind that soap made with lye can burn eyes, so you want to make sure you're not getting that like on their head when you're washing them or they're splashing the water. That is something to keep in mind. But I mean, you can still use it. I used it with my daughter and we never had any issues. She loved it. I loved it. It was great soap. So if you guys like this video, or if you want to see more videos on breast milk soap, go ahead and check out the playlist that I'm going to create, and then leave a comment. And if I have more breast milk available, I might throw another what do you call it, YouTube video up or something like that. Thank you guys.